The year was 1943, and the news from the Eastern Front sent shockwaves across the world. The German Sixth Army had surrendered at Stalingrad. This was the moment that marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. Yet months before the collapse, one man saw the disaster coming: Field Marshal Maximilian von Weichs. As the commander of Army Group B, he repeatedly warned Hitler that the operation would fail and called for a retreat. But Hitler's refusal to listen would lead to the encirclement of over 300,000 men. Why did Hitler ignore one of his most experienced commanders? Maximilian von Weichs was born in 1881 into Bavarian nobility, a lineage that laid the foundation for his distinguished military career. In 1900, he joined the Bavarian cavalry, embracing the life expected of a nobleman. But his true calling came in the crucible of the First World War, where he served as a staff officer on both the Western and Eastern fronts. His methodical planning and keen eye for detail earned him the respect of his superiors and peers alike. After the war, von Weichs remained in the Reichswehr, Germany's newly formed military, where he held several general staff positions. As the Second World War approached, von Weichs was transferred from the 3rd Cavalry Division to command the newly formed 1st Panzer Division. His leadership in large-scale maneuvers earned him praise, and in 1937 he was promoted to command 3rd Army Corps. It was during this period that he showcased his reliability during Germany's annexation of the Sudetenland, one of his first major operations. The invasion of Poland in 1939 would be von Weichs's first major test of leadership in World War II. His corps, aptly named Weichs, advanced with precision, securing their objectives in textbook fashion. Following the surrender of Poland, von Weichs was promoted to command the Second Army in the West under General Gerd von Rundstedt. His breakthrough at Sedan during the 1940 French campaign earned him the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross and promotion to Generaloberst. His reputation continued to grow, and in early 1941 he led the Second Army in the Balkans. But it was here that he issued a chilling order. For every German soldier wounded by partisans, 100 Serbs would be executed. This was a clear signal that von Weichs's tactical mindset had begun to merge with the brutal realities of occupation warfare. As Operation Barbarossa unfolded, von Weichs remained a key commander. He participated in the great encirclement battles at Kiev and Smolensk, pushing his forces deeper into Soviet territory. By 1942, Hitler entrusted him with the leadership of the newly formed Army Group B for Operation Blue, the mission that would drive German forces deep into the Soviet Union. Von Weichs's new responsibility was immense. He had to coordinate German, Hungarian, Italian, and Romanian forces, each with different military traditions, equipment, and morale. But the challenge was not just logistical, it was philosophical. Hitler's vision for Operation Blue was aggressive and rapid, a far cry from von Weichs's systematic approach that prioritized securing supply lines and maintaining unit cohesion. This clash of strategies would soon set the stage for disaster. At first, the operation seemed successful. German spearheads advanced quickly toward Stalingrad and the Volga, and Soviet resistance appeared to falter. But von Weichs, ever the cautious commander, noticed troubling signs. The front line stretched over 500 miles, far beyond the capacity of his multinational army group to defend effectively. Reports of Soviet troop concentrations in the north and south of Stalingrad worried him. Von Weichs could see the danger coming, but his warnings would fall on deaf ears. On November 3, 1942, von Weichs sent a formal report to Hitler outlining the vulnerabilities of Army Group B's positions. Romanian divisions were holding a front that was 3 times the safe width, and Italian units were severely under-equipped for the harsh Russian winter. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Hitler dismissed von Weichs's concerns, insisting that capturing Stalingrad would break Soviet resistance. Throughout November, as Soviet troop movements intensified, von Weichs issued increasingly urgent warnings. But Hitler's optimism, fueled by propaganda, refused to acknowledge any weakness. On November 18th, von Weichs sent his final warning, a prediction of a breakthrough within 24 hours. But again, Hitler refused to budge. November 19, 1942, marked a catastrophic moment for the German forces at Stalingrad. At dawn, Soviet artillery erupted across the Romanian Third Army's front, tearing through the defenses that von Weichs had warned were inadequate. The Romanian divisions crumbled, creating massive gaps in Army Group B's northern flank. The next day, Soviet forces struck the Italian Eighth Army, which collapsed even faster. By November 23rd, the pincer movement had closed, trapping General Friedrich Paulus's Sixth Army in a shrinking pocket. The once invincible German forces were now surrounded, and the tide of war had turned decisively in favor of the Soviet Union. Maximilian von Weichs, who had long understood the scale of the impending disaster, immediately urged Hitler to order a breakout for the Sixth Army. He argued that the Sixth Army still had fuel and ammunition to last 48 hours, and if they acted quickly, they could escape the encirclement. But Hitler, stubborn as ever, refused to entertain the idea. The Führer's insistence on holding Stalingrad at all costs overrode the reality on the ground. Von Weichs, now powerless to act, watched in horror as Paulus radioed desperate messages requesting supplies. As the days passed, German transport planes attempted to bring in vital supplies, but Soviet fighters and heavy flak shot down the aircraft. The situation became more dire by the hour. Von Weichs, already struggling with the impossible position of his multinational forces, watched helplessly as Hitler stripped him of his most capable units, transferring them to Manstein's Army Group Dawn. This move effectively sealed any hope of a successful rescue operation. By January 1943, von Weichs was left with a shattered army. The remnants of his once formidable force were exhausted, and the Sixth Army was now nothing more than a ragtag group of survivors, most of whom were starving, frostbitten, and broken in spirit. Finally, on February 2, 1943, the Sixth Army officially surrendered. Out of an original force of 250,000 men, only 90,000 survivors emerged from the rubble of Stalingrad, most of them sent to Soviet POW camps. The battle for Stalingrad had destroyed one of Germany's most elite fighting units, and it was a blow from which the Third Reich would never fully recover. Von Weichs, who had once been one of Hitler's most trusted commanders, had witnessed firsthand the catastrophic consequences of the Führer's refusal to heed military expertise. His career on the front lines was now over, and though he was relieved of his command, von Weichs's role in the war was far from finished. Despite the failure at Stalingrad, Hitler promoted him to the rank of General Feldmarshal, a hollow honor that did little to erase the disaster he had just overseen. In the summer of 1943, von Weichs was reassigned to southeastern Europe, now tasked with a very different challenge: quelling the growing partisan resistance in the Balkans. As the head of Army Group F, von Weichs was expected to fight a guerrilla war against Tito's Yugoslav partisans and other resistance groups that were threatening German control of the region. This new assignment required a shift in tactics. The large-scale, conventional battles von Weichs had once excelled at had been replaced by irregular warfare that demanded brutality and an iron fist. Von Weichs, once known for his precision in large-scale campaigns, now found himself overseeing a campaign of ruthless reprisals against the civilian population. His forces carried out widespread destruction of villages suspected of aiding partisans, executing thousands of civilians in brutal acts of collective punishment. The methodical leader, who had once won praise for his disciplined maneuvers, now presided over terror and brutality, with his forces engaged in war crimes that were just as horrific as anything seen on the Eastern Front. In 1944, von Weichs's responsibilities expanded further when he was given command of all German forces in Hungary. This new post put him in charge of defending a critical portion of the Eastern Front as Soviet armies advanced toward the Balkans. Von Weichs now faced a situation where his forces were outnumbered, overstretched, and ill-equipped to fend off the Soviet assault. His army was crumbling under pressure, and the collapse of German control in the region was swift and undeniable. As the Germans retreated from Greece and Yugoslavia, von Weichs's role in the war became more of a footnote than a triumph. The military genius he had once been praised for was now overshadowed by his failure to recognize the limits of his power. The German forces were stretched thin, and von Weichs had nothing left to command but a series of increasingly desperate retreats. With the war nearing its end, von Weichs found himself facing another challenge: survival. As the Allies advanced through Europe and the Third Reich collapsed, von Weichs was taken prisoner by the Americans in May 1945. He was charged with war crimes for the atrocities committed under his command in the Balkans. However, before he could stand trial, von Weichs's health deteriorated, and he was removed from the hostages' trial on medical grounds. Von Weichs spent the last years of his life in relative obscurity. He died in 1954, at the age of 72, in the quiet surroundings of Burg-Rosberg near Bonn. His death went largely unnoticed, a stark contrast to the man once entrusted with the command of entire armies. His legacy, marred by the failure at Stalingrad and the atrocities of the Balkans, is a testament to the complexities and tragedies of war, where even the most skilled commanders can be undone by the whims of a tyrant. Maximilian von Weichs's story serves as a sobering reminder of the harsh realities of leadership in war, where even the most experienced military minds can be crushed under the weight of bad decisions and the refusal to acknowledge impending disaster. From field marshal to war criminal, von Weichs's trajectory mirrored the downfall of the Nazi regime itself, a journey of unchecked ambition, devastating failure, and a legacy of ruin.